Welcome to the Empty the Bench Podcast Network's Best of 2024 video series, presented by Playback. While you break out your holiday traditions and enjoy the festivities, join us on a look back that was the year in sports in 2024. This is the Moving the Goalposts 2024 Year in Review Part 2 with Nick DiMartino and Ben Kruse on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Nick DiMartino. That's Ben Kruse. This is Year in Review Part 2 of Moving the Goalposts. You can follow all Empty the Bench. You can follow all Empty the Bench shows on ETB. You can follow the Empty the Bench Network on social media, across social media at ETB Network. You can follow me on Twitter at Nick DiMart. You can follow Ben at Ben Kruse 144. You can follow this show, Moving the Goalposts, at MTGP ETB across social media. You can follow. And I said empty. All right, so I got everything. You can follow the Empty the Bench Network and watch all Empty the Bench shows on youtube.com/ETB Network. You can listen to all Empty the Bench shows on etbpodcast.com, and you can listen to Moving the Goalposts wherever you get your podcasts. You can make sure to like and subscribe. And this show is presented by Playback. Watching sports is more. This show is presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, having your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB Network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. All right, so this is the Year in Review, Part 2, second half. So we start in July. The first thing we have to talk about is Bronny James. The Lakers draft Bronny James in the second round, I guess causing all this controversy about nepotism in the NBA. This was, I think, one of the, like in the summer when it was sort of a slow time, this was like one of the biggest stories.
Yeah, definitely. Of course, LeBron was talking about, before this season about potentially playing with the Sun at one point, but we had no entire idea in terms of, Bronny was going to be drafted by the Lakers. And there was obviously a bunch of teams that kind of passed up on him, and they found a way to draft him. And I know he obviously really hasn't gotten a chance to play a lot with LeBron, but in the minutes that obviously he has, a lot of fans, of course, have been cheering it up for him when he's gotten a chance to get in there. And he obviously hasn't played a lot, but a ton of media, obviously, it was a massive story during the summer because obviously there's not a lot of stuff going on during the summertime for the NBA. So this was obviously one that really was a massive headline. And now obviously he's not really playing a lot in the NBA, more in the G League. And obviously he's doing what he can. I really haven't been paying attention to how he's really been playing. But yeah, this is, of course, was a massive thing that a ton of people were following throughout the summer.
Yeah, well, I mean, in fairness, I think it would always be a big story just because it's LeBron's son.
Right.
And we all know how much the national media talks about LeBron. I mean, obviously, it just makes perfect sense, obviously. But yeah, this was a really big thing. I remember people were talking about like nepotism in the NBA and things like that. And I will say he clearly wasn't really good enough to be drafted. Like if he wasn't LeBron's son, they wouldn't have done it. However, it's also sort of one of those things where they were trying to do LeBron solid, which was similar to when they hired JJ Redick.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, I think that it was probably not a good idea to put him on the roster right away. That was probably the problem. I know LeBron really wanted to play with his son, but I think he put him in a really bad position. I really do. I think that he put Bronny James in a really tough position because it would be like getting into a college you're not qualified at. Like, you're obviously going to struggle if you get into Harvard and you're just not good enough to get into Harvard. Like, that's what this was like with Bronny James on the Lakers. It really just put him in a position where he just wasn't ready. I mean, I would understand it a little more if it was like there was one more game left in LeBron's career before he was going to retire, and he just wanted to play one game with his son, and then he did it. But, I mean, like, in this case, it was like he probably shouldn't have been on the roster right away. He wouldn't have even entered the draft if he wasn't Bronny James. Like, he never would have even entered the draft. Remember people are talking about, like, other teams potentially drafting him and holding him hostage?
Yeah.
That would have been pretty funny. Some more NBA stuff. The Knicks offseason, they lost Isaiah Hartenstein and signed Brunson to a massive deal. Actually, people forget, Brunson actually took a pretty big pay cut when this happened. The Knicks losing Hartenstein, all right, I'm fine with it. Like, that's how I felt at the time. I was fine with it. I prefer to have Hartenstein, but, I mean, it wasn't worth the money. Second of all, the Knicks couldn't match the Thunder's offer. Legally, like, they couldn't do it. And even if they could, it wouldn't have been worth it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, obviously at this point in time, I think when I saw that happen, I'm like, oh, that's a massive loss for the Knicks. Mitchell Robinson's obviously, he's still hurt right now, but he was obviously down. But I don't think it really hurts as much now because they got Cat a couple months later. So I think that Cat's obviously a lot better of a player. No offense to Hartenstein, but Cat's obviously, he can pick and pop the three ball. He's played really well defensively. So yes, it hurts, but I do think that the Knicks gained something. And I feel like they had a backup plan coming into place because I know obviously Hartenstein's not the end-all type be-all player, but he was a big piece in terms of what they were kind of building the last couple of years. And obviously the fact that they lost him, they had to get someone to replace him, and I thought Cat was a pretty good move.
Yeah, we can include Towns. We don't need a whole extra segment on Towns, but yes,
Right.
I remember. By the way, the Towns trade, the Towns trade that happened oddly, really, really late. The Karl Anthony Towns trade.
That was like right before training camp.
It happened in like, what was it? Late September.
Yep. It was like right before training camp. Like the Celtics already had their training camp open. There was like a couple teams that went early, right around preseason, and then the Cat news kind of broke out of nowhere, like out of nowhere. So
I remember when it happened because it was right around the time that the Mets were competing to make the playoffs, and they played the Brewers. It was a Friday night, and I think I did the football forecast show, and they were playing the Brewers, and they lost. And I'm pretty sure that night, Gary Sanchez hit a home run on the Brewers against the Mets. And I was just like, I didn't even know Gary Sanchez was on the Brewers. I remember that. And I really liked the move. I liked most of the Knicks offseason moves. I don't even think I disliked any of them. I really liked all of them. The Knicks offseason moves. I liked the Mikal. I liked it when they got Mikal Bridges. I liked it when they got Towns. I didn't care that much about losing DiVincenzo and Randall. I mean, look, I think Randall is extremely overrated. The Knicks were not even that much worse without him in the playoffs last year.
I haven't really heard much about him right now, so that pretty much says everything.
No, I don't think Randall is that good. I'd much rather have Towns. I think Towns certainly is a much better offensive player, although they both do have injury history. But
yeah,
I think that the Knicks right now could be like the third best team in the East.
Yeah, I mean, well, like on paper, that's starting five.
On paper.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it'll work out that way, but on paper.
I think the Celtics are one, and then you could obviously make a debate on the others. I mean, the Knicks are up there. The Cavs obviously been fantastic.
The Cavs are better than the Knicks, I think. The Cavs, they're in first place, right?
Yep. They're only up by like a game or two, but it's going to go back and forth, honestly. I think really for the Celtics, to be honest, I don't really care about the season until the playoff happens. But it would be nice to get the number one seed if you got the chance to. In terms of this Brunson thing really quick before we move on, this obviously had to happen. I'm not surprised. Like you mentioned, he took a pay cut. His heart and soul is to New York. I remember I even got the chance to and I don't really want to go off topic here, but I went to the Fanatics Fan Fest over the summer at Javits Center, and I got the chance to see Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart do their podcast in person, and it just everybody that was kind of there, they pretty much were like all massive Knicks fans, and it was just like a massive like appreciation that Jalen and Josh really have to that overall city. So I never saw a world that he would leave that overall city, and he's really their guy there too. So I'm really happy for the Knicks fans, and I think he's going to be obviously a great player for a long time there.
Yeah, the crazy thing is, like, nobody could have expected he would be this good as a Knick.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Like when he was with the Mavericks, it was nothing like this. It was nothing like this.
No.
In fact, I remember when the Knicks signed him, I didn't like it because I thought it was too much money. I was so wrong about that. That may have been the wrongest I've ever been about something. It was not liking when they signed
Brunson. Play like starting minutes with Dallas. I forgot if he kind of started like off the bench and then he brought himself into the starting role, or maybe he was kind of like a guy back and forth. Like he can start, he could play off the bench. But like his name is like really grown obviously over the course of the last few years from like a perennial potential guy that can really play to now obviously one of the best players in the league.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And and people were talking about like, Randall and, with the Town Street, people were like, oh, Randall, that's like a huge loss. I don't really think it is. I don't think any of it. Like, I think the Knicks are a better team this year than they were last year, even though they ended up somehow with the 2 seed. I mean, a lot of Knicks fans were talking about how we were decimated by injuries last year, but in reality, I think the Knicks benefited from the injuries more than the injuries hurt them because so many other teams in the East were injured that year.
Right.
So another thing, Paul George to the Sixers. That was another blockbuster move.
Yeah.
The Sixers, they're not looking too good right now.
Yeah, no, I mean, heck, I was actually just talking to my coworkers before coming back home. And he's a Sixer fan, and I told him, like, I know we're not big Philly fans at all, but I also want them to be fully healthy for them to, kind of see where they are. And obviously originally at the time, looked like you had a big three going with Embiid, Maxey, and Paul George. And unfortunately, they've only really played a couple games throughout this regular season. I mean, Joel Embiid has, injuries now left and right, unfortunately. He has, I think, a sinus fracture that, they're seeing that could potentially at least a week, at least to be reevaluated. Maxey, obviously, he's been fine, but he obviously hasn't been the same guy I don't think that we're accustomed to seeing to. And then Paul George, I think, he's been a fine player, but I don't think that when you look at it, I mean, Paul George, as an overall player, I feel like to me, and this might be a little bit of a hot take, but I think he's more of like if you have a star around him, I think that he is a solid player, but I don't think you want to have him be like your actual physical star. I think just something about it tells me that I think him going to Philly, I kind of was like, all right, that's a fine move. But like when you look at like the other teams around the East, does that obviously that move kind of make them from like, I don't know, the 6th seed to like the 4 seed with Paul George? I mean, I guess, but it's like, obviously right now they're abysmal, so it really doesn't matter. But yeah, I mean, they're trying to obviously win something, and they brought Paul George in. So
I don't think it was a bad move, but I think the problem with Paul George is that he's frequently injured. Although like he played, I think last year was the only like full season that he played.
Yeah.
For most of his career, he's been injured. The other thing is the problem was not so much Paul George, it's Embiid. Embiid isn't playing. That's the problem that the Sixers have right now, it seems like.
No, Embiid, like every single week, I'm just seeing like a new update of like he has a nose fracture, he has something to his ankle, and it's like, well, yeah, obviously injuries are injuries. Of course, stuff's going to happen, but it's like it's outrageous with Embiid because typically he's been physically durable, but every week, man, it's like, all right, like I eventually and obviously I can't judge injuries. I don't want anyone to be hurt. But like eventually it's like, all right, maybe you can try to work things out and play through it if you can. Obviously you got paid millions and millions. If it's really, really bad, sit out, but I feel like with some of the injuries that he's had, he's kind of taken it to his advantage. It could be just me. I mean, heck, I'm not Joel Embiid. I have nothing against it. I've never played in the NBA before, but I'm just seeing something every single week. I'm like, sure about that? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, well, he was talking about how he doesn't play back-to-back games.
Yeah. So
I thought that was
obviously,
bizarre.
yeah. So obviously you put that into effect, but then obviously the injuries that he's had, it's like, I don't know what obviously want to compare this like Ben Simmons in terms of like him being out, because obviously Ben Simmons is an awful player. Joel Embiid's actually a really good player. Um, but yeah, it just, and the crazy thing too is he's averaging 20 points a game right now, Embiid has, and it feels like he's barely played any of the season. So yeah, I mean, you basically take him away from that team, and the Sixers only have 7 wins. They're a 12 seed right now. I mean, the last playing team has 11 wins, and that's Chicago. So it's like, it's not like they're physically out because I think the season's still early enough where they can kind of turn things around. But as they say, availability is your best availability, and if he's not out there consistently, they have no shot to kind of turn things around. So obviously, bringing Paul George in, I think was obviously a great move at the time, right? But if you don't have all of your guys kind of playing together, it's kind of a moot point.
Yeah, no, exactly. Another thing we have to get to. Bill Belichick dating a 24-year-old. That was a pretty big story. I think Bill Belichick, ever since, the funny thing about Belichick is that he was all hyper focused, his entire tenure with the Patriots, hyper focused on football and
Yep.
all that, and never really made the news for anything outside of football, including that includes scandals too, like Deflategate and Spygate, things like that. But for those 25 years or however long he was the head coach of the Patriots, it was all football related. That was his whole life. And then as soon as they mutually part ways, whatever that means, that's when he starts making the tabloids, which I found so funny about this whole thing. That Bill Belichick turned into a regular celebrity after he left after he parted ways with the Patriots, and was always in the news for all sorts of silly reasons.
Yeah, no, this is obviously, I mean, for myself as a Patriot fan, Bill, obviously, you do you, right? I'm not going to judge it at all. I mean, it's kind of weird. It's actually really, really weird.
He's
But
he's old enough to be her grandfather. He's
yeah,
probably older than her parents.
I'm more of shocked the fact of the 24-year-old is really dating the older guy out of anything about this, and they're continuously kind of still getting along with it. I mean, she's obviously posted a ton of stuff on social media the last couple weeks of I remember when Bill got accepted to get in the UNC job, which we'll talk a little bit.
Yeah.
She posted, I think, something the fact of I'll see you there, and I'll be at the games and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh my God, it's really, really odd. But I mean, I'm wishing him well. Yeah, ever since I mean, of course, the 20 years and everything that he did with the Patriots was great, but it almost felt like he was never kind of sitting back and being refreshed. It's it was always being pressured of every single season. It was just like you mentioned, strictly football, and obviously understandably about that. But now, obviously, he's obviously with this 24-year-old. Like I said, you do you. I'm obviously not going to judge it. I think it's really weird. But besides the fact, he kind of went into the media little field for a little while. He's obviously still with Pat McAfee. He obviously did some of the Manning cast for a couple months. But I think his heart was still with football, but he wanted to kind of take a little bit of time away from the game for a little while, still be kind of involved, but now getting himself back into coaching. And obviously now the NFL, the day and age of now where, it's younger coaching, that's obviously being a lot more of the talk of the talk. So I think Bill looked at this of all right, I still want to coach, but where can I get my opportunity? And so he looked at college as this opportunity where he could teach a lot of young kids, the ways of kind of doing it, what he did over with the NFL. And, now I don't know. There was rumors about the 24-year-old going to UNC or the same old school. So
I don't think so. I think she's a little old to be in college.
Yeah.
Well, I guess maybe not. You could be a grad student or something like that.
Yeah.
But the funny thing about this whole thing is that it's not even Bill Belichick is old, but is a young soul or anything like that. He's old, but in a weird way. He's not just he's 72. And you do bring up a good point. It is a lot weirder that she would like date Bill Belichick.
Yeah.
Like that to me is a lot. Like I look at that as much weirder than the other way around, which is like that's just how I see it. Like, oh, just because he has a lot of money and he's Bill Belichick. I mean, the other thing people often brought up is like, what do you even talk about? And like I do see that because I'm a little bit older. Like I'm literally older than his girlfriend is, and I'm also a guy. And I know football, and I couldn't imagine having a conversation with Bill Belichick about anything. Like, I don't know if I hung out with Bill Belichick, I don't know what I would talk about with him. And that's going to be so much worse than the case.
Sorry to cut you off, but I was going to say, if I'm going to be with Bill Belichick for a full-on day, I'm just going to talk strictly football because that's pretty much all I know about him, right?
Yeah.
And obviously, there's other stuff about his overall personal life that I probably have no idea about with Belichick. But all I do know is he is a football historian. And, I mean, I think I could talk hours and hours and still ask him questions. That's how great of an overall football guy he is. And for this girl, it's like, what really do they talk about? I mean,
I was thinking that too. But no, exactly that. Because, like, but here's the thing. Even if I did talk about football with Bill Belichick, like, we've seen the way he talks to reporters. He's not a very personable he's not personable. Like, he doesn't seem to like talking with people. Like, he doesn't even like talking about football with reporters. I couldn't imagine having a really long conversation with somebody like him. Like, it's kind of like, he's kind of like Greg Popovich. Like, I feel like if I were to meet Bill Belichick on, say, a plane or something like that, or Greg Popovich on a plane, I couldn't talk to him the whole plane ride about their respective sports. Even though they're a wealth of knowledge, even though they have like a wealth of knowledge about it, I couldn't imagine talking with them for long periods of time about it. Like there are some people in sports media or coaches or whoever that seem to be that seem to be a lot more personable. Like I think Tom Thibodeau fits this description too a little bit. I think he's a really good basketball coach, but I couldn't talk to him about basketball, I feel like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I feel like he would give like one word answers and, the conversation would just end. And it's the same thing with Belichick, it looks like.
I do think, though, that, I mean, obviously Bill, I mean, I've seen some of the interviews he's done with Pat McAfee, and he seems just a lot more refreshed and relaxed. I mean, he was actually on today with McAfee. I was watching some of it, and they were asking about the UNC job and in terms of, like, your overall process through it and how he feels about it, how he feels about his overall decision. And it seems like he really likes it. And I think he's really excited for this new challenge. And he just seemed Belichick's a guy that's really never like smiles a lot. He's never really happy a lot. And my buddy my buddy from college is a Colts fan. He's like, dude, like I despise Belichick. And he's like, it's not because he's a great coach. He's like, because he just never smiles. And I'm like, well, it's just kind of his overall persona. I mean, there's really nothing that we can say about it.
If you think about it, all of the best coaches are like that. They all kind of fit that description. I mean, because, and I think the reason is because, I mean, it's true. This is true about college football. It's true about the NFL. It's certainly true. It certainly seems to be true about the NBA, college basketball, even. It's just like, I think that being a guy like Bill Belichick, even though he had tremendous amounts of success as the Patriots head coach, I don't know this, but something tells me he didn't really enjoy it. Like, I don't think he enjoyed the success as much as you'd think that he would. I mean, if you look at somebody like Saban, I think Saban fits that description too. Like Saban had a tremendous amount of success at Alabama, but I don't think he enjoyed it very much. Like, I think he had a lot of pressure on him. He was a celebrity in Alabama, in Tuscaloosa, and I don't think he enjoyed, he wins a national championship. He's happy about it for 20 minutes, and he has to go back to recruiting the next day. I don't think Nick Saban enjoyed it very much. It's just like I don't think Bill Belichick enjoyed his success that much. And I think I really think that head coaches, like the best head coaches, even though they have this amazing success, it seems like they don't get a chance to enjoy it very much.
Well, I'm going to counterpart on that because I think in the moment, at least with Belichick and Saban, they were always looking at every single season as a challenge, right? Yeah. And I think that they wanted to take it as a challenge because of what the previous season had. So obviously when you look at it, and they obviously when Bill retired from the Patriots and when Saban obviously retired, I think that they can look back and be like, wow, like, we really accomplished everything about that. And we couldn't really sit back and really kind of take it in. And I think that yes, I don't know in terms of how much he really enjoyed coaching the Patriots. I think he liked it, but I think that he just kind of kept it to himself as feelings. And I don't think that he really wanted to share it with
Right.
everybody out there in the media. I think that he kind of wanted to take every single season as challenge because you win one Super Bowl, right? And it's already hard to win one. Then trying to do the same exact thing another year where everybody's trying to steal that obviously that same exact challenge we want to take. And like you said, it's challenging. I think when you at least try to get it once, but to do it again and again and again for 20 years, I think there is a certain type of like we can understand why a guy like Bill and a guy like Saban, it's like, all right, we don't really enjoy trying to get the fact of like everybody's trying to come at us, but we also understand that if we want to be successful, this is the best way we got to go about it.
Yeah, that's the point. It's not that I think he didn't enjoy coaching. It's just like there was always so much pressure on him, and it just seemed to me like he never really truly enjoyed it. Like that's what it seemed like to me. Another headline: Skip Bayless leaving Fox Sports. That was another bombshell. I mean, Skip Bayless. People like to hate Skip Bayless, and very few people are as good at their jobs as Skip Bayless is. I'll have to say that he claims that he wasn't forced out and that he chose to leave. I don't know if I really believe that. Although I guess it's plausible. They still have to pay him money, so they still because under because under these contracts are like professional athletes. They're gonna end up paying him a lot of money to not be there. Now he's doing his own thing. Yeah, Skip Bayless. I will say just. People like to hate him, but he also totally transformed the sports media landscape. And he is a personality. He is like he has the personality traits of a lot of like really brilliant people and like inventors and things like that. Like if you learn things about people who have like famous inventors, for instance, they have very sort of chaotic, obsessive personality traits. And Skip Bayless also seems to have a lot of those traits. He's a very obsessive person, like and just obsessed with his craft and everything, way more than almost anybody in sports media is.
Yeah, obviously he was there for 8 seasons with Undisputed with Shannon Sharp, and I think
Which flew by the way. I can't believe he's been there that long.
yeah, no, that's crazy. And I wasn't like a guy that would watch that show consistently, but what I do know is most of their talk was typically football and basketball related.
Yeah.
There was a ton of debating kind of going back and forth, but I feel like specifically it was really a debate type of topic show. Like, understandably, of course, you need to obviously agree with some viewpoints here and there, but I think that, yeah, he obviously left for FS1, and I don't really know in terms of how he's doing. It's obviously his new like gig right now. But he pretty much said on August 2nd of this year, Skip said, I had a great 8-year run. I mean, when you have an 8-year run for anywhere, I mean, you're doing pretty good. But it's a business at the end of the day, whether you're in media, whether you're in sports, and I think that he wanted to change, but I do think, people are kind of saying that he left on like raw and bad terms. I don't understand if that's necessarily the overall truth. I think that, a ton of people, remember ESPN was having a ton of layoffs and there's a ton of people that were having cutoffs. Who knows? It could have happened with anybody. Skip Bayless obviously was kind of, I guess, a scapegoat at the end of the day. But I mean, for 8 seasons, he did a pretty good job over there. And, I know he has a little bias when it comes to like guys like my guy Brady and stuff. So, but like all in all, I think that he was fine. I mean, I at least personally had no, no personal anything against him. I think there's a ton of people that did, but it's like, it's what it is.
But like people say that I just think he has some really absurd opinions. But I think every sports analyst or commentator has some opinions that are a bit absurd or have had some really cold takes. I think all of them kind of fit that description. It also doesn't mean that just because he draws absurd conclusions doesn't mean he doesn't know what he's talking about. You can still know a lot. Like, I still think he knows. People often say things like he doesn't know what he's talking about. That's not true. He knows a ton. And part of the reason he knows so much is because he's so old and lived through so much.
If he didn't know anything, then more fact than not, he would not get a chance to have a job for eight seasons there.
No, I mean, well, think about it. Like he remembered, like I said, part of the reason is because he's been following sports so intensely for such a long time. And like I said, part of the reason he knows so much is because he's so old. And that age has a lot to do with how much you know, especially when it comes to sports. I mean, yeah, he does draw some absurd conclusions. Although, it's just like his personality is just so much like obsessed with debating and winning debates. And if you heard him talk about his daily routine, it's some of the craziest things you've ever heard. Like,
I didn't hear that.
On the Skip Bayless podcast, he says that he once said that he hasn't missed a cardio workout since 1998. That is crazy.
Does he do it like every day during the week? Or?
He does it every day. He does cardio, I think like an hour of cardio every day before every show. I don't know how it is now that he's just only doing the podcast, but he said that he does it every day before every Undisputed show, and I think every First Take show also. Which is insane. He would get up at like 2 a.m. or something like that, and just start and just do cardio for a whole hour, which is just insane. That's like 7 hours of cardio per week or something like that, or probably in his case, likely even more. And he would do that every single morning. Also, you would think that at some point you would miss a cardio workout because, I don't know, you get sick or you get injured or something like that.
Yeah.
Especially a guy his age. Like, at some point, maybe you pull a hamstring at some point, you might not be able to do cardio for a couple of days.
I obviously, I need to get myself back and kind of doing the cardio stuff, but like, I feel like doing it every single day for that long, I don't know. Something tells me it might be a little too much. Like you obviously want to do enough, but you obviously want to kind of balance it too.
7 hours of intense cardio a week is too much. Yeah, I think most trainers would say that.
Definitely.
It certainly is too much. I do 1 hour of intense cardio per week. This is 7 hours. That's insane. So, yeah, but he just, like I said, he has this very obsessive personality, which makes him such a captivating figure in the world of sports. Home Run Derby. Remember this national anthem disaster? You got to remember this.
Yes. Wasn't it that lady that was like the wording on it at the end? She was kind of like, yeah.
It was the whole thing. It was like another it was very similar to the Fergie thing.
The Fergie thing with Draymond Green, obviously having that smirk after it.
Yeah, a whole bunch of it's very similar to the Fergie one at the NBA All-Star game. Mm-hmm. This at the Home Run Derby. So similar circumstances. It was being compared to the Fergie national anthem. I think this one could have been worse.
Yeah.
It was like the biggest story at the time because there wasn't much going on.
Yeah, and I think I remember after the fact, she addressed everybody on social media about it. I think it was a couple days after, saying like she was not 100% or whatever, and she was like,
I forget her name. She was a country singer, I think.
Yes, I'm looking at her right now. I think her name was Ingrid. I think.
No, Andres.
Hold on.
Andres something. Ingrid Andress.
Andress, yeah.
Ingrid Andress is the name.
Yeah, so apparently there was a lot of chatter how she was drunk. I think.
Yeah, she was.
Yeah, I mean the way that she sounded, she sounded like she was not singing it. She was drunk singing, which before Home Run Derby, I remember this actually because it was during the summer and I was on a cruise, and during my family vacation on cruise.
The Kruse, like your last name?
Yeah, well, it's the same. It's the different wording of it. I mean, I'm KRUSE. Cruise, like cruise ship, is CRUISE.
Yeah, I know, different spelling.
But yeah, I mean, it was the first time we went on a cruise as a family this year. It was a while, so it was good to be back. But yeah, I was watching the home run derby on it, and I remember just the social media outrage after she just completely botched it. So yeah, just that was something to watch for sure, and not in a good way.
Yeah. Well. So here's what happened. She claims that she was drunk during the performance and went into rehab afterwards. That's how bad it was. I guess it is true that you have to hit rock, like alcohol, like addicts have to like hit rock bottom before they end up going to into rehab. I mean, to me, my thought process is it was so odd to me because she wasn't that famous. Maybe because I'm not really a country music fan. I didn't know who she was. She had to have been fairly moderately famous, at least to sing the national anthem at the home run derby. But my thought process was this might be, if not the most important performance, one of the biggest performances of your career. And you're not doing everything you can to be in the best possible shape mentally and physically as you possibly can. Like if that were me in that situation, like I wouldn't even want to eat anything that makes me feel weird before a performance like that. I mean, let alone being intoxicated before it. And not only that, the national anthem is how long? 2-3 minutes long. It's not that long. You could just get drunk afterwards, and you don't have to worry about anything. Like even if you are an alcoholic, don't you think that would make a lot more sense to just say, I'm going to get through this performance, and then afterwards I'm going to get drunk. That would have made a lot more sense to me than what she did.
Yeah, no, definitely, for sure. I was just going to say this of like, the national anthem is something typically it's really hard to like not screw up, right? You know, it's
easy. I would say it's easy to not screw up.
Easy not to screw up. Yeah, thankfully. Thank you for that. But
did you meant to say easy not to screw up?
Yes.
It's hard to screw up, is what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
Okay, it's hard to screw up, right? Because it's the national anthem.
Yeah, it's a national anthem, and the only way you can screw up is with the certain instance potentially like this, I guess. And yeah, you're right. I mean, she could have just waited, 2-3 minutes after the fact and had a drink with other people. I mean, this was in Texas. I'm at the home run derby, and yeah, just your overall mental state of mind, going on, center stage. Everybody's watching you.
Yeah.
There and on TV. So of course you're going to get an overall reaction of like, if you are not doing well or, something happened, of course you can get scrutinized for it. So it sucks too, because I don't think she was trying to do it like that, but I do think that, she kind of did it to herself.
Yeah, well, the thing is, it is, on one hand, you're right. It is hard to screw up the national anthem. The problem with playing the national anthem before sporting events is that it can only ever cause controversies. Like, it seems like there's nothing, it seems like nothing ever good comes from it. Like, all that could really happen is some type of weird thing like this because even if a singer is great, it's just like, okay, that's supposed to happen. You know what I mean? It's not like anything positive comes from it. Like, but with the national anthem, it can only ever go bad, it seems like, in these situations.
Well, the thing about the national anthem, too, and I know we're kind of getting off topic here, but a lot of people don't sing it the same kind of way.
Yeah.
There's some people that tried to sing it, crazily, just like a different, falsetto or just kind of a different way of doing it. So it's like, every single time, like, when I went to the Patriots Colts game, obviously somebody did a national anthem typically, for as a sport event, and the person that's saying it straight through, great, nothing crazy about it. And those are my favorite people that sing the national anthem. Of course, I'm typically not going to judge a lot of people that do sing it, but like most of the time that people are just straight through and obviously sing the national anthem, it's fine. And then you're just like, all right, you go through it. But there's so many people now these days where it's like, you have to add that like, and the free. I know.
In the fridge.
It's essentially kind of stuff like that. It's like, all right, like, you know.
Yeah. All right. So I do want to talk a little bit about where the NFL holdouts quickly. There were a bunch of NFL holdouts this past year, whether it was Brandon Ayuk, Jordan Love, Tua. The crazy thing, I will say, I think that the holdouts generally prove their case. I would say. I mean, Tua and Jordan Love really did prove their case that they were worth the money. Jordan Love, especially because the Packers this year are one of the best teams in the NFC, one of the best teams in the NFL, certainly one of the and one of the best teams even in the NFC. And it was absolutely worth it. It was worth it with Tua too. The problem is Tua got injured, and the problem with in Tua's case is it was just the injury. But it did show, but the injury did show how much better they are with Tua than they are without Tua. I think both of these.
100%. Yeah, no. I think, and you said the Brandon Ayuk one, that was really the only one that I think caused some tension and drama.
It did.
Coming into the season because the Niners, and to be fair with the Niners, a lot of guys were injured, but a guy like Deebo Samuel, he's obviously not the same guy he once was. Brock Purdy, obviously, he's been fine, but he hasn't been as great, I think, as advertised with the Niners this year. Defensively, there's a couple of guys that are getting older. They're just kind of taking a step back through it all. And I think that they started essentially with the Brandon Ayuk stuff in terms of everything just kind of translated into that season where it caused a little distraction kind of early on to the season. And they really never got themselves back on track. I mean, with the Packers one, Jordan Love, that was probably the best one to have hold out because they know that he is the guy long term. And, he wanted to get paid and he got paid. And yeah, he's just doing great there. He's going to be there long term. And I knew for a fact, I mean, the Packers do so well, man, with like just draft. I mean, obviously, you went from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love. I mean, the Packers obviously can't really talk because, I had Brady for so long, but like the Packers, the way that they develop quarterbacks is just exceptional.
Yeah.
So give them credit. And then with Tua, like you talked about really quick, just the Dolphins, obviously early on the season, you take Tua off that roster and everybody just dies down statistically. I mean, Tyreek barely got the ball. Jalen Waddle barely got the ball. You bring Tua, and I know that obviously a lot of people have their criticisms of Tua because he obviously can't play in the cold. I saw a tweet, I think, today that Mike McDaniel is like, 3-8 or something with the teams under over 500. So obviously that's kind of a separate thing. But like Tua, regardless of the fact of how you want to criticize him or not, he's definitely their guy. I mean, for a fact there's stuff in there that we know for a fact he's a franchise quarterback. Is he a guy that's going to make them a Super Bowl contender? I don't know about that because you have just so many other better quarterbacks out there. But you take away Tua and that Dolphins team, as we kind of saw around the season, they're just not the same team that can move the ball, at will offensively. So I think that the 2 of the 3 holdouts that we saw pretty much kind of stood their case. The only one that really didn't stand their case was Brandon Ayuk, and between the injury and between just the kind of the contract situation. And I do think that he got the extension, by the way, right? He requested a trade, I think, and that it's happened for so many guys too.
I don't think he really wanted to leave. I don't think Ayuk really wanted to leave.
I think pretty much it's more of a show of like, give me my money, please.
Yeah, because like especially when they were talking about him going to the Patriots, there is no way he would have wanted to go to the Patriots.
No, I mean if anything, I think that we're the highest now in terms of cap space. I would rather wait. If anything, if he was going to be back on the market this year, I would rather do it then. But yeah, I think 2 of the 3 things for the holdouts, I think pretty much straight true to their word for the right reason.
All right. So another story that we have to get to. The Jets firing Robert Saleh in the middle of the season. I am no Robert Saleh fan. I don't think he's a great head coach. I think he's a good coordinator, but not a good head coach. However, this move was demonstrably stupid. It was. There was no other way to put it. Firing your head coach in the middle of the season is not a smart idea because you can't find anybody to replace him. Like, it's kind of hard to get somebody to replace him when it's in the middle of the season. The only other guy you have is the defensive coordinator, Jeff Ulbrich. And Jeff Ulbrich was demonstrably worse than Robert Saleh. And I think there's a lot of games that the Jets could have won if Saleh was the head coach instead of Ulbrich. It could have derailed their whole season. It really could have.
Yeah, we talked about it before here on the program. So if you guys get the chance to, me and Nick kind of go through it a couple months ago about this. But, early on in the season with the Jets, there's a ton of turmoil obviously going on in terms of, what the hell's going on. And they just made this firing. And it was almost like, Nick, I know that obviously Saleh really isn't a head coach material. But like you said, was there so many options that were going to be better off after firing them? Not necessarily, at least in season. It's really hard to find an in-season type of guy that you're going to find that is a better situation than what you had. And I think that Saleh was fine for what they had it for the time being. They just kind of made him as kind of a scapegoat, really.
Yeah.
And they obviously brought Ulbrich in, who was kind of in-house defensive coordinator, and it was almost like they were thinking they wanted to get better, but instead they got worse. So that pretty much told me that the Jets were really quick to this, kind of as an overall assumption of like, we got to do something early and we have to be very reactive about it. And it bit them in the ass too. So obviously Saleh right now, I think, is a defensive specialist, I think, over with Green Bay, and he's doing a really good job over there. But yeah, no.
I've never heard of that. It sounds like assistant to traveling secretary, like on Seinfeld.
Yeah. I don't know exactly what his role is, but I know it's something with the Packers on the defensive side. So let's see if I can really find what exactly he's doing. Yeah, he's a consultant. That's what he is right now. A defensive perspective to help Packers head coach Matt LaFleur with game planning. So, I mean, I guess you can say whatever he's doing defensively for them. But yeah, just all in all with this, I mean, like I said, we talked about it, but just he was a scapegoat at the end of the day. I think that he wasn't a great head coach, but I also did think that they were pretty much quick to judge everything, and there was no better backup plan that the Jets had to take place, and instead they brought someone that's in-house and somehow made it worse.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say somehow. It's not surprising at all that they ended up making it worse. Yeah, this Jets season was just. I mean, look, we've talked about it ad nauseum. I'm so sick of watching them because I sleep through most of the games if they happen at 1:00, and I have to watch it afterwards on my phone.
Did you do that yesterday?
I actually didn't watch that one yet, but I know what happened, but I didn't watch it yet. And watching these games is like a chore. Because it's just like the season is over and Jets are so bad. It's so depressing. Everything about it. I would say the Mets season was a little different. The Mets made the NLCS this year in what was an incredible season, the OMG Mets. This will be, I mean, there were so many memorable moments. For me, the most memorable moment was the Alonso home run.
Yeah.
Another moment also very memorable was Jose Iglesias diving into first base. That was the second most memorable.
Yeah. That one
those two plays, like Jose Iglesias diving into first base could have saved the Mets the series, and then the Mets, and then Alonso hitting the home run. Both those plays likely saved them the series.
Yeah. No, we talked about this too, about the Mets. And obviously now they got rewarded for it, but early on in the Mets season, Jorge Lopez, I remember
look at where the Mets were. I mean, like, I love looking back at that because it wasn't that long ago. It was only in June when Jorge Lopez threw his glove into the stands, and look at where they were. It's almost like looking back at your personal life, and you're like, at this time last year, I was homeless. Now I'm killing it. Like, that's what it's like with the Mets.
Yeah, no, and I still remember the clip. And it was in a bunch of hype videos of Gary Cohen. It was a day-night doubleheader. I think it was against the Tigers, in which the second game, it was the Tigers or the Dodgers. It was one of those teams. And there was nobody in the stands. It was completely, I mean, of course, it was a rain-out makeup game during the week, so I think a lot of people were going. But the Mets obviously were 10 games under 500. The team looked awful. And Jorge Lopez, after the game, decided to basically call the team the worst team in Major League Baseball in a post game or whatever. And a couple days after, the Mets are like, all right, we aren't going to play with that. And Francisco Lindor essentially, I remember this really well now, he brought everybody in to have a meeting, like a team meeting, and be like, all right, we got to find a way to ride this ship. We have to, obviously, we can't be, one game. It can't be overnight. We got to find a way to turn things around. And ever since that he said that, they basically turned things around and then some. We were basically debating, I remember a couple months ago, in terms of if we felt the Mets were going to make the playoffs. And I do think I said that they were.
I don't remember what you said. I remember I said no, they wouldn't.
Yeah.
It was more than a couple of months ago, but I would say in August at that point.
Yeah,
August.
I think that I said yes. I think it was just the fact of like there's so many teams. I know they were kind of around them, but I didn't think that they were like, all right. I think it might have been like the Giants, the Braves. Yeah, I think it was the Giants and the Braves. And then like the Mets can find a way to kind of keep themselves afloat. They obviously, with like the Atlanta situation, was the weather down there. That was a hurricane, right?
Yeah, there was a hurricane, and
oh my god, this is like all
the
coming
Mets
back.
had to play a doubleheader on Monday.
Yeah, so for me, I think the Francisco Lindor go-ahead homer to get them to go to the playoffs was number one, and then the second one, actually, the Alonso, I think, was the second one to me. But then the grand slam Lindor had against the Phillies, I think that was when I'm like, all right, like, because I think originally a lot of people were like, the Mets are in the playoffs, but it's like, how much can like this magic kind of keep on going? But like they went through the Phillies, and the Phillies were a team I think a lot of people thought were going to go back to the World Series. Remember, they were one game away from the LCS against the Diamondbacks the year before, and they didn't just seem like they were kind of getting themselves back this year. They obviously had a little bit of a break. And a lot of things too, Nick, was like a lot of the teams in the wild card just felt like they were kind of like riding high. And I think the Mets had that. So essentially from a ghost town early on the season with Jorge Lopez to where they got to, and now they obviously have Juan Soto. It's like the Mets essentially with their season into where they are now. I mean, if you told me with Juan Soto, Nick, I know of course money, this talks, but do you think that Juan Soto, remember from the Jorge Lopez situation, the Mets would choose the Mets over the Yankees, kind of giving them where they were now? But then you looked at it where they were for the playoff run, and you have to take into account where the Mets beat the Dodgers more than the Yankees did in the playoffs. And if you asked me that early on from this past year's season, I'd been like, you're probably crazy. I mean, maybe they can, and obviously this is a great transition into it, but like, it just everything with the Mets, man. And like, I still think they have a ton of magic coming. That's the great part of it. It's like, magic is magic, but it's like the Mets, I just think that have more of it because there's still so many guys that they can build around. Of course, Lindor, the Vientos, we'll see if Pete comes back. But Pete did not have the great overall regular season for his standards, especially in a free agent year, but that one swing essentially made everything worth it. So just crazy overall run by the Mets this past
Well, that one swing, it's one of those things where it's like you remember where you were when it happened, at least if you're a Mets fan.
Yeah, I think
everybody remembers that.
It was a winner-take-all game, first and second against one of the best closers in the game. And
Alonso not having a good year either. Like at that point, Met fans were so done with Alonso.
Yeah, remember? I think it was the same game he dropped that foul ball.
Yes,
and people are like, "Oh my god, can this guy please get out of here?" And it's like, of course, that one swing, and then of course the media, BT and Sal and all these guys are like, Pete Alonso, I forgive you. And but deservedly so. I mean, that was one of the biggest swings for the Mets all year. So give him credit.
I remember, like, if you watch the games on ESPN and you see that, and you see like the probability tracker, it was like 91% Brewers in the 8th inning until that home run happened. That is incredible,
right?
And just going back to the Mets getting Soto, I think it's so funny how so many Yankee fans are like so apoplectic about this and like having meltdowns over it. They're like they find it so unfathomable that a professional baseball player doesn't value the pinstripes and the history of the Yankees. I mean, the Yankees haven't won a World Series in 15 years. like so many Yankee fans are just like can't possibly fathom. Oh my God, I can't believe he doesn't care about our history. Like like when the other team across town offers him more money and is also in a very good position.
Yeah, no, people have to take into account that the Yankees got Juan Soto through a trade. People are saying that there's loyalty. It's not designed to be with the Yankees, but you have to remember that Juan Soto was traded to you. Like he doesn't
Yeah.
owe you anything, and he got
Even
your
if he chose
team
to go there, he doesn't owe you anything.
exactly, and he got your team essentially. No offense to Aaron Judge, because I think Aaron Judge obviously played a part in it, but in the playoffs, Aaron Judge has not been great. Let's just state the facts here. And I think that he saw the way that Aaron Judge was doing in the playoffs and basically looked at him and been like, do I really want to be with a guy like that who I have to bank on essentially trying to perform every single October? Or I can go to a place where I might have a better future because the Yankees farm system isn't great. Let's just kind of be real. The Mets have a pretty good farm system. They got one of the richest owners in the league. He still could be playing in New York, and they could be better. Looked at this down the road than what the Yankees could be. Honestly, the Yankees, Juan Soto deserves nothing from it, and I understand because Yankee fans look at this situation and be like, "Oh, he went to the so-called little brother." I mean, eventually the Mets were going to get their prized possession. I don't understand why Yankee fans are just shocked about this. I
Yeah.
don't understand it. You saw Steve Cohen is multi-billionaire, and they got him like 4 or 5 years ago. Eventually, something like this was going to happen. And David Stearns essentially a couple of years ago was basically saying that this was the guy that we were looking at for when he got to become a free agent, Juan Soto. We're going to do everything possible to make it happen. And look what happened.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing I want to talk about, and I think that this year in October, the two of the greatest pieces of memorabilia came out, which was the Garrett Wilson catch and the Austin Capobianco. The Garrett Wilson catch, I was at that game. I think we talked about it. I remember when it happened. This was incredible. He just barely, not only did he make the catch, with one hand, he also somehow got his shin down, and it ended up counting. And I just thought this was just incredible. It was an amazing catch, and it really felt it was a great game by the Jets, even though it didn't end up helping their season. In fact, we would have been better off losing that game, but in the moment, it felt good. I would say, I guess it felt good in the moments.
I mean, and like for teams that aren't great, you hopefully have some type of like moment that you kind of look back on, regardless of the fact, and been like, "Oh, that was great." I mean, I think for the Jets, this is obviously one of them. I mean, obviously, I don't really want to spoil the Jet game from yesterday, but the Jets had some pretty good moments in their game yesterday. So, I mean, yes, obviously, there's a lot of bad, but hopefully, you can take some of the good out of the bad because if you just talk about bad the whole entire time, then what's the point? All right.
Yeah.
You hopefully be able to take some of the good out of the bad. And this was obviously one of them. And people, of course, want to, talk about, is this a better catch than Odell Beckham's? I don't know. It's definitely up there. I mean, I do think for you, you probably think this is a better one because
I don't.
you were there and you kind of witnessed it. And if I was,
I actually don't. I don't think that. I just look at the catches themselves. I am more impressed by the Odell Beckham catch, but this was a great one too. It's also, I mean, it's different when you see it. When you see it live, you can't. When I saw it live, it just didn't look like I could even tell what happened. Almost like I thought for sure he was out of bounds when I saw it live.
Oh yeah, definitely. No, I think when they went back, I think he was in. And obviously that was a big point of the game. The Jets, I remember that first half. The Texans obviously were very they really weren't moving the ball at will. The Jets offensively, that was kind of that stretch with the Jets too, where offensively they're just awful and defensively it wasn't great. And something kind of clicked, I think, in that second half where they kind of started to move the ball a little bit. And that catch obviously kind of really got the Jets going. So great catch. I got to cap for that for sure.
Yeah. The other story was the Austin Capobianco when he mugged Mookie Betts. Like I said, those two pieces, amazing memorabilia to like bid for.
Mhm.
And they happened within maybe 2 days of each other, I think.
Yeah. Mhm.
I mean, this guy was just a complete idiot. I mean, there's no other way to put it. He was like Mookie Betts clearly caught the ball, and then he just, as if there aren't cameras and people in replay, and nobody's going to notice. And he's like, "Oh, you didn't catch it." Like, obviously, everybody's going to notice that. And also, I don't know if you saw the other guy next to him who was like trying to pull him into the stands. I
No,
mean,
it was yeah.
such idiots.
Imagine paying all that money to go to the World Series and you basically just waste it all away in terms of you're in your seats and it's like, hey, I'll try to be hero. And it was another thing too, and I don't want to rip on Yankee fans out there because listen, I'm as a Red Sox fan, I have a bunch of friends that are Yankee fans, and a lot of them are mad chill. But this was just kind of like the overall, like, I'm not surprised by it. They essentially, this one Yankee fan essentially made this whole entire fan base look bad that night. And then, like, oh, like, I'm cool enough where I'm going to, rob Mookie Betts and potentially make. And the thing was, like, he thought he was cool about it too. Like, I think you remember, like, he left the stadium. And it's like, yeah, like, I'm essentially like a hero or something about it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
like, you paid millions of bucks to go to a World Series game, and you basically wasted away like the first 3-4 innings into it.
Yeah,
So,
because they ended up not letting him back in.
That guy. You're probably not going back there. Didn't they ban him?
I don't know if they banned. They might have because
I don't know if they did. I think there was reports out, but I wouldn't be shocked.
Look, I wouldn't. I'm not a Yankee fan. You could ban me from Yankee Stadium. I wouldn't care. I don't ever have to go to to be honest with you, I don't ever have to go back to Yankee Stadium for the rest of my life, unless there's like a Subway Series, something like that. Then I would like to go to. But for the most part, I don't really have to step foot in Yankee Stadium. I don't need to spend $12 for a bottle of water and $80 to park. And
well, for me, did I ever tell you the story about my last trip to Yankee Stadium?
No, you didn't.
Oh, really quick. While we have very little time, so I went to the Notre Dame and Army game.
Oh, right.
And I got there an hour before kickoff, and obviously it was crowded. Of course, it was going to happen. This was in November, and there was no people outside of like Yankee Stadium. Like workers were out, kind of be like, "All right, like you're going to this certain game, this certain game." It was basically just a free for all where people were trying to figure out like how to get to one place or another. So I got to one gate and it was like nobody was moving. So I tried to find another gate. I kind of sat there and the line was not moving. It got to the second quarter where I finally got it. I had to wait 2 hours, Nick, in like 20-degree weather outside of Yankee Stadium. And I thought to myself, I'm like, if it wasn't for two of my college buddies that came down from Massachusetts for that weekend, I would have just turned around and went home. It was completely, and the game itself was a blowout too. So I theoretically stayed for like 2 quarters. I went home because I had to be at work the next day. But that was my last time at Yankee Stadium. So it sucked. It sucked.
Yeah, I had a similar experience when I went to the Subway Series a couple of years ago. And it was a doubleheader. This was when I don't think they do this anymore in baseball, but like they used to have like 7-inning doubleheaders, 7 innings each. I don't know if they still do that. They don't do that anymore, do they?
I don't think so.
I could be wrong. I don't
know.
All right. Bill Belichick to UNC. I guess we talked about this a little bit. Yeah. Bill Belichick hired at UNC. Here's what I'll say about this. If you had told me that either Nick Saban would go to the NFL or Bill Belichick would become a college head coach, I would have certainly told you 5 or 10 years ago, Nick Saban is more likely to become an NFL head coach than Bill Belichick is to become a college head coach. It is an odd move from Bill Belichick's standpoint that he would go to a college like UNC. It's not even like a big program, a big football program. It's UNC. You would think that he would have only wanted to go to like some really big program. I don't know. How do you think he actually will do? And this is almost like not even – we got to talk about it. This is just huge news, even though it's very, very recent. I don't know. I think he might struggle a little bit as a college head coach. Although the flip side is I do think there will be a Deion Sanders effect for UNC. Just the name will bring in recruits.
So In terms of how I feel about it, I think that he's gonna actually do pretty well. And this is why I'm gonna say this. This is not me being a pious Pats fan at all, but I think Bill does a really good job in terms of his overall name. Like Dion, obviously, his son and stuff. But like, do I look at Deion Sanders as a historian in terms of overall great when it comes to a coach?
Yeah.
I think that this is a certain different situation of like Bill could basically take a lot of what he's had in the past, coaching the game, and kind of translate it into these younger kids and athletes, which I think is really, really cool because you don't get a lot of that now in this college day age. There's a lot of younger coaches that are pretty much helping these kids trying to get to the pros. So I like it. I think, like you mentioned, I think he might struggle to start, but I think it's going to be the overall conference that he's in. I think that's a pretty good.
It's a weak conference.
It's a good conference.
It's a weak conference.
And Bill, and another thing about Bill, and I know he's not the greatest GM. I do know that for a fact, but I do think that he recruits. He's going to have a really good team with him that can recruit, and I think that that's the biggest thing. I think Bill will do everything that he can to make that program successful. And I did see a rumor the other day, actually, obviously Quinn Ewers from Texas. There was a potential transfer of Quinn Ewers maybe going to UNC. That's just the kind of the overall draw name, right, that you're going to get from a lot of these athletes if it wasn't for a guy like Bill. Bill is that big of a name where there's going to be a ton of guys, ton of kids that's going to go to a program like UNC now, where if you don't have a name like that, then it's probably not in the works. So I think it's going to work. I think it's going to take some time. But I think the biggest thing about this is he's excited for this opportunity. I think if he's excited for this opportunity and he's going to get everything about it, I think he'd do well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think. Yeah. I think he'll do. I think he'll stick around for a couple of years and then maybe leave. I have a feeling he won't stay too long.
Well, I think he has a contract for like 4 or 5 years. So I think that's fair because I think that when they asked him at the press conference in terms of why do you take this or something like that, and he basically said he's just like, I still like coaching the game. This is kind of where my heart is right now. And yeah, this is essentially kind of what he wants to do. So
yeah,
I'm happy for him.
Yeah. So, all right, that is our show this week, the year in review. We will be back in early January. So,
yeah,
see you guys then. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks for a great year.